Good afternoon, Year 2, and welcome to Thursday's guided reading. And today we are learning to retell a story well. Now, do you remember, hopefully, on Monday, you started thinking about how to retell a story well, and I hope you watched this lovely storytelling video of a traditional African tale with the antelope in and the lion. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. So today I want to start off being like the connector again and thinking, what did the storyteller do that made it a really good story so that we can have a go at retelling our own stories and do it really, really well. So I've written a list. I'm going to hide that list for a minute and I want you to have a think back. What do you think might be on my list? What do you think that storyteller did well? And if you've got someone there with you, you might want to pause the video and have a chat, or you could just have a think to yourself and then I'll share my ideas with you. Should we have a little type it down? So I watched that story carefully, and these are the things that I think made that a really good story to listen to. He had a really good story to tell. It wasn't a boring story, it made me laugh. I liked the characters in there, so that was really important, having a good story. The next one I think is really important, knowing the story by heart. He wasn't reading the story to you, he had remembered that story and he was telling it from his memory. Now, storytelling is a really important part of a lot of people's cultures in Africa, and those stories are passed on from person to person. People tell those stories to their children and they remember them and tell them to their children and so on. So those stories were never written down originally, they were just remembered in people's heads. That's quite tricky. We're going to find a way to help us do that today. Looking at your audience. So right now, I haven't got an audience in school. I'm in an empty room and I'm looking at the iPad that I'm talking to because I want you to feel like I'm looking at you. It helps you to concentrate and it makes you feel like you're in a room with me. So if you're telling the story to someone who's there, it's really important that you look in their eyes as much as you can while you're telling the story. This is the one I'm working on for my videos because sometimes I get excited and rush. But what I really liked about this storyteller was he spoke very, very slowly and very, very clearly. And that helps the person listening, your audience, to understand the story. Sometimes I need to remember to slow down. Adding your own detail. That goes with knowing the story by heart. If you know the story by heart, you need to keep your story really simple so you can remember it. But as you're telling it, you can add in whatever you like. It means that no two times that you tell a story will they be exactly the same. And I'll show you an example of that in a minute. One of my favourites, doing the different voices. I love the different voices that he used for the different animals. It helps the listeners imagine who is talking. He had a lovely drum as well, so I've put down using props. That could be things that are in the story. Maybe if a cup is really important in the story, you would have a real cup that you could hold. Using music to make it exciting, and when there's scary bits, having those tense beats. And finally, getting your audience involved. I loved the way that man was asking questions to you as you were watching to get you thinking about the answers. So I want you today to have a go at retelling your own story. Try and remember to do as many of these things as you can. And I'm going to try it out first. So I thought I would have a go at retelling that story that I wrote, Why Giraffe Has a Long Neck. And I thought I would use a technique that we've used in school before, which is drawing a story map. Now I've just remembered, this isn't the whole story map. This only goes through, if you have a look at the pictures, up to the point where Giraffe pulls a mango off the tree, puts it in her mouth and says, So when I was at home last night, I made a story map for the rest of the story. I'm just going to go and get it. I've got it. Now, I wanted to show it to you. I'm not going to tell you the whole of my story because I want you to use this time to do your own storytelling. But I wanted to show you that I did this quite quickly. My drawings are not the best drawings. I was quite pleased with my little lion. However, my chameleon was terrible, but they only needed to be just good enough for me to be able to remember the details of my story. So you don't need to spend doing too long making this. It's just for you. You might decide to just choose a part of the story to have a go at retelling, because it can take a little while to get started. And I'd rather you practice telling one small part really, really well than told a really long story not as well. So, shall we have a go? Shall I see if I can do it? Let's remind myself. I think I've definitely got a good story to tell. I don't quite know it by heart, but I'm hoping that looking at my story map will help. And I'll spend a few seconds just looking at it before I start. I'm going to make sure I look at you as much as I can. I might have to have some sneaky glances at my story map. I'm going to try really hard to remember to speak slowly and clearly. You might notice I add in some details that weren't in the original story. I'll do my best to remember to do the different voices. I haven't got any props in here. I wonder if you can find some props at home. And I'm going to try and ask you some questions to get you involved. Okay, here we go. Right, let me just have a look. Okay, I think I'm ready. You see, there was a time when the greatest, tallest of all the animals, Giraffe, was not tall at all. In fact, she was short. There's a picture of her there. And you can see her antlers are short. Her legs were even shorter. And her neck was the shortest thing of all. Now, there's something else that you should know about Giraffe. She loved to eat. But unfortunately, she was a bit of a fussy eater. And there was a reason for that. If she ate anything a little bit unusual, she would get a nasty tummy ache. And it could last for days. One day in Tinga, it was a beautiful sunny day, and Giraffe was a little bit bored. She went for a walk. And as she was out walking, she saw a great big mango tree with even bigger mangoes on it. Thought Giraffe, those mangoes look delicious. I wonder if I'll get a tummy ache if I eat a mango. I've not ever tried one before. And she thought about all the times she'd seen those cheeky monkeys enjoying the mangoes. The monkeys make the mangoes look so delicious, she thought. Surely they can't hurt my tummy. And she looked for the biggest, juiciest mango of all and picked it off the tree. She gently pulled it from the leaves and carefully put it into her mouth. When all of a sudden, there was a low, rumbling noise. What do you think the rumbling noise might be? I think it might be her tummy. As delicious as the mango tasted, Giraffe had the most terrible tummy ache she had ever had. What on earth was she going to do? What do you think she did? Well, she did the only thing she would in that situation. She went and asked the other animals for their help. Now, that's where I'm going to stop with my story. I hope you enjoyed my storytelling. I hope you noticed the extra detail I added in, although I was looking at my map a little bit to help me. I tried to use the table instead of a musical instrument. I didn't have very many voices to do. That would be in the next part of my story. So now it's your turn. I would love you to have a go at telling your own story. If you can, film it and send it in. Sorry about that, everyone. My video cut off then. What I was saying was I would like you to have a go at telling your own story. Now, it's up to you. You could carry on the story of the giraffe from where I got up to and tell the next part of it. You could choose a different Tinga tale to tell, Or you could tell any story that you like. Maybe you'd like to make your own story up. I'd like you to either tell it to a family member at home. Maybe you've got a family member you don't live with who you speak to on Zoom that you could tell the story to, like a grandparent or an auntie or a family friend. Check with a grown-up first, of course. Maybe you could tell it to your teddies. If possible, you could film it and send it in to your teacher. We would love to see them. So think really carefully about all those things that you can do to make it a really good story, and good luck.